Are you ready to move to Mexico from the United States or Canada or some other country? 2023 has brought some changes, and that's what I want to talk about in this video is the immigration changes for 2023, but also just the general process of immigration into Mexico. And this is a great video. I know some of you are already residents of Mexico, but you should watch this anyway because how many people are going to be asking you questions? Everyone's always asking you questions on how to move to Mexico. So I have someone with me who has all those answers. So Ivonne is here, and she is with a service that is great for foreigners who want to move to Mexico, and it's called Host Relocation Mexico. She's going to talk more about that, but I want to dig in about immigration in general and then about those changes. So, Ivonne, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Brighton. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for your time. Let's dig in and talk about kind of the basics of immigration. So someone thinks, hey, I want to move to Mexico. So let's do it like step one. I want to move to Mexico.
I think this is a good opportunity to solve many of the questions that you as a foreigner may have when you try to move to Mexico as a resident. So first of all, Mexico, as in any other country, has requirements so you can become a resident. There are three main requirements. First one is economic solvency. If you fulfill certain amount of money per month or per year, you can apply for a permanent or temporary residency. I'm going to talk about the difference later on. Mm-hmm. The second one will be if you are sponsored by a company registered in Mexico and you have a job offer, you need to, well, of course, you need to be a legal resident so you can come here and work for that company as an employee. And the third one is you need to be related to a Mexican citizen. That means if you are married, or if you have a Mexican children, or if one of your relatives, meaning direct line, grandparents, or as I said, children, are Mexican. Mm-hmm. So those are the three main ways you can obtain the temporary or the permanent residency.
And so those are not, you don't have to do all three. You essentially, it's one or two or three. They're exclusive to each other. Okay.
Yes, exactly. They are exclusive. Yes. So basically, depending on which area or which requirement you are in, you can apply for temporary or permanent. Temporary means that, of course, as the word says, is temporary. The first residency needs to be for 1 year. Economic solvency or even as a work. If you are also married with a Mexican citizen, the first card is for 1 year. You cannot skip the timing and says, I want to pay all four. Most of the consulate says that you can do it, but in the practice, when you go to I&M office in any part of Mexico, the maximum amount that they accept is 1 year. Then if you can renew it for 3 years, so after 4 years, you can apply for a permanent residency. Permanent, as the name says, means that you can stay here all the time that you need. And even the permanent includes the work permit. So you can work, you can open your company, and you don't need to pay for a work permit, or you don't need to be sponsored for a company. The only thing you need to do is just let I&M know that you're working now.
So let me break in there. So essentially with the temporary residency, you'll go through the process, which we'll talk about the process, and you'll pay for 1 year essentially. And that's really like, we're talking like $100 or something like that. It's not a big fee. And then after 1 year, you pay for the next 3 years. And then after that, you can transfer into permanent residency. Permanent residency, if you're able to get that off the go, you go there once, you pay a bigger fee, but you're good to go for the rest of your life. Kat and I were lucky enough to get permanent residency when we moved down 3 years ago. I think that some of those changes is about how likely you are to get permanent. However, temporary is not a bad thing. I'd say most people that I know down here that have been here for less than 4 years are temporary residents. So it's not a bad thing. It's pretty easy. Once you get your first one, you can kind of go through the next two steps in the process over 4 years, and it shouldn't be a problem.
Exactly. So the main difference is as a temporary, you cannot work unless you pay for a work permit or you get a job offer from a Mexican company.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other difference is that you can bring a car, foreign license plate car, with a temporary, not as a permanent. And the other difference is that as a permanent, right now, since 2022, and of course from now on, the permanent residency is considered the retired visa. So it is most of the time eligible the people that is over 60 years old and they are really retired. So they can show or social security or mainly social security is a way you can prove that you are already retired because there are people that is over 60 years old and still working, and most of the times they are not eligible for the permanent, even though they fulfill the economic requirements. And the permanent, as you mentioned, you can live here forever. You don't need to renew it. Only the children need to renew it, even though they are permanent. The children under 18 years old need to renew it every 4 years because, of course, the face change, the fingerprints change. So that's a requirement like a passport.
So I'm going to have you quickly go over the other two ways in terms of work permit. I'm not sure. There's not a lot of people from the US or Canada that are going the other two ways, although there are some. Kat and I were under 60, and we were able to, 3 years ago, before 2022, get through and get permanent residency. Not as common now at all. I've heard maybe if you're retired out of the military, that will be accepted because there's maybe more of an understanding that people retire out of the military at younger ages. But otherwise, you're going to have to be in your mid 60s probably to get that. But the other one is not that bad. And one of the things you also mentioned earlier that I should have mentioned something about is coming to the office here in Mexico and wanting to pay that the consulate in the US where you start your process may say like, oh yeah, you can pay for 4 years. But then when you get down here, although they're related, they're not the same place. So maybe we can continue
Exactly.
this conversation. I want to cruise into the actual process, how someone moves through that process.
Basically, Brighton, the steps to get this temporary or even permanent residency is go get an appointment into a Mexican consulate in your home country or in your last country of residence. There is a lot of misinformation from a lot of places, from especially from social media, that you can get your residency once you are in Mexico. That is not true. So you need first to go to a Mexican consulate and make an interview. As I mentioned earlier, it can be an interview through economic solvency, or it can be an interview because you have a job offer from a company registered in Mexico. But in any of those cases, mandatory, you need to have an interview at the Mexican consulate. So, what did I mention that is the country of residence or your last country of residence? For example, you can be American living in Europe and you have been living there for a certain amount of time, meaning 10, 5 years. You already have a bank account there. You have a job or you have a family. So you have making your life outside your home country. So the question will be, should I go to my home country, to the Mexican consulate, or where I live now? I my suggestion is where you live now because they're going to ask you for your bank account statements. So if you have a bank account and you made a work life or a retirement life in another country, you need to prove that to the Mexican consulate where you live now. So you will show your bank account statements of Europe, you will show that you work there, you will show that you are retired there, even though you were born in a different country. So that's why I said your last country of residence.
That is great to know. And let's talk a little bit about those consulates. So where you start is very clearly inside your country of residence. So for most folks here, either Canada or the United States, and most larger cities have Mexican consulates in them. And but they're not all created equal. So, and the two things I'm thinking of, and you might even know additional things, and one of them is the ability to get an appointment, and the other one is the amount of money that you have to have. So that requirement, strangely, of economic solvency is different in different places
Different.
throughout, at least, probably throughout the world.
Yes.
So let's talk about those 2 points.
And yes, you're right. That difference is throughout all the world. So it's not by country. So basically, what I suggest, if you live in certain area, you need to find the closest consulate to you, and you need to go to their websites and check their actual economic requirement for temporary or permanent, the visa that you want to apply for. Why? Because as you said, the amounts of money they are requesting is very different. And from 2022 and 2023, the increase was an average of 20% of what they are asking last year. So you
Yes.
need to be very aware of it. And also, my suggestion about how to make an appointment. My suggestion is always go to the website and find their email. They are the best way they find out is by email. You send an email with your passport saying you are a certain nationality and that you have a certain economic solvency per month and per year. So
Mhm.
you are trying to make an appointment for a temporary or permanent. And they will reply back. They are not that fast because too many people is making a lot of requests. So the average time that my customers has told me was from 3 to 5 business days. So
Okay.
please be patient. And in 5 business days, if they don't reply you back, just send them another email saying, hey, again, this is Yvonne, and I want to apply for a temporary or permanent residency. So that is the main way to get in contact, and that's the fastest way. Some of the consulates may reply back saying the best way to make an appointment is through the website, and they will send you the link of the website, and they will tell you that is important. That's why I suggest to send them an email first. They will tell you the dates or the day of the week that their calendar is going to be open, because as everything in Mexico, every consulate is different. But they will let you know if their best way to get an appointment is through the website or it's by email. So
Mhm.
if they need more information from you, they will request it, or they will send all the requirements and says, check out the requirements, Brighton. If you fulfill it, just reply me back and I will give you my availability.
Yeah, and that's great. I like how you suggested kind of sending the information up front that, I know that I meet the solvency and kind of like so that they know you're maybe a little more serious than someone who's just like, hey, I want to move to Mexico, help me. So I like that. And also, I want to mention that those numbers, if you're close to, like, if you're just below, you say you're in Portland and you see the economic solvency requirement of the Portland consulate is, $2,000 a month or something, and you're like, oh, well, I only make 1,800 or something like that. You can consulate shop. And Q RuPaul actually has a video about that. I'm going to put a link up here because I think like one of the cheapest places, like or the not cheapest, but the least requirement is like McLaren, Texas. So if you can get there to like near a border town, they have. I mean, in some cases, I would guess 30% lower economic solvency. So look around if you're near that border. If you're lucky enough to not be near that, just go for the closest place or the one that can get you an appointment. And I think it's better to start this in advance, and we'll maybe Yvonne can tell us some of the timelines, but I would say start sooner rather than later. That's definitely going to be a theme throughout this video. But maybe you can get us the kind of like, this is how much time you have to do the different steps in the process once you pull the trigger, because once you have that appointment, there is a clock starting.
You just mentioned a very important thing. The appointments right now, it's from 1 month to even 3 months of time frame. So if you request that now, you can have an availability, or the consulate may have an availability in March. So the sooner, the better. And there's no way you can plan, because sometimes they said, oh, I'm going to be in Mexico in May. And I have found that some clients actually receive an appointment in February. So sometimes you cannot even plan. It's Mexico and they have their own availability. So just go for it. If they just give you a date, it's so hard to get them. So just go for it and take the first available date.
Yeah.
The other thing is, yes, if you send an email with all your information, they will say, this person is have the requirements, so I will take the time to reply, or I will take the time to even send them the availability. So that's very, very important. And also another important thing to consider, once you have your Mexican visa, you have 6 months to come to Mexico and do the second part of the process that I'm going to talk about a little bit in a few minutes.
Yeah, so you get the Mexican visa. Essentially, I've got it here in my passport. So when you go to your consulate, after you'll have an appointment, they apply the sticker to you get the sticker up in the United States at your consulate. And does that happen during that appointment? Once they see everything, do they send you over and get everything handled that day?
In the 90% of the consulates, yes. The other 10% is because they have a lot of applications, so they have a workload. So they said, hey, Brighton, please come back in 5 business days, and I will let you know if you are eligible or not. They don't even tell you, and you need to leave the passport with them so they can glue the Mexican visa that you just show in the passport. So 90% they said, hey, just get some lunch, come back in 1 or 2 hours, and your Mexican visa will be ready.
Yeah, for us, we got these. We didn't even leave the consulate. We just went over. I think we were in Portland. We went over, like, walked into the other area to pay like $40. There was a fee or something, and we walked back. And by the time we walked back, these were already glued in. And she was like, "Here you go, you're done. You now have, once you got that thing, you now have 180 days to get across the border." So we're now at that. Essentially,
that's correct.
The step 2 is to cross the border, and this is an important part, I think, to talk about, especially if you're driving across the border. And also, there were a number of changes in 2022 of this system, and they're still rolling out in 2023. So we're going to kind of talk about the process of crossing the border for your first time once you have your Mexican visa, because you don't want to mess this up and you don't want to skip it. It's really easy to skip. I don't know how many people I see on Facebook forums kind of at least every week, if not every day, that said, oh, I forgot to do that at the border. And the only answer is drive back to the border. You can't
drive back or fly back.
Yeah, or fly back. Yeah. So a lot of people will fly to Tijuana from La Paz to handle the step. So let's talk about that step. You have your little green stamp. You are coming in on an airplane or driving across the border. What do folks need to do?
The FMM right now, it's digital. The change has been made 6 months ago, as in every process, it's little by little, step by step. So right now that I've seen in 2023, it's all digital, no more paper. So the last 6 months of 2022, they were tests, they were, like the changing system. Right now, it's only digital. What do I mean by digital? So as you said, you're crossing the border. I'm going to talk first by plane. You're crossing the border, you land, you go to customs, and you are facing your immigration agent. So you look foreigner, so they may ask you, why are you in the country? So if you have your Mexican visa in your passport, you need to show it and says, I'm here for a canje, or I'm here to get my temporary or permanent visa. So you need to show it, mandatory. Immigration agents, they don't guess. You look foreigner and they said, okay, tourists, go. And they have too many people to serve on that same flight. So it's very, very important to show the Mexican visa glued in your passport and says, or even canje, or temporary or permanent residency. What they're going to do is they're going to stamp the Mexican visa or the page nearby with your entrance date, and they will write the word manually with pen, canje, and 30 days. If you're done with that, that's fine. They will tell you about downloading a digital FMM for your immigration application. So they will give you a paper or they will tell you, hey, take a picture of the QR code so you can download your FMM for immigration. If you're hiring a facilitator as us, we will do that for you. Basically, the QR code is a website where you create an account, you enter your information, and then the system will take you up to the point to generate an FMM in a PDF file. You need to print it out and just take it with you with the rest of the paperwork to the immigration office. So that's basically what you need to do. There had been some mistakes, sometimes from the foreigners, sometimes from the immigration, that they just register you as a tourist, or that is a big complication because you need to go back, as we mentioned, to the airport and try to correct the mistake. Most of the times, they cannot do anything on the system, and you need to fly back and come back. And it's very important to mention that that Mexican visa is just one entry. What does that means? That even though your visa has an expiration date of 180 days, if you enter Mexico, that means that you need to start the process yes or yes. You have 30 days from the day you stepped in Mexico to start the process in INM, not to finish it, just to go to INM for the first time. And that means I want to mention that because I have had clients that says, but I have planned my vacations in Cancun. I didn't have planned to finish the process. I didn't know that I'm going to receive the appointment sooner. So what should I do? And I said, if you come here, you will burn that Mexican visa. So you need to start it yes or yes.
Yeah, because I have heard about that too, of people who they get here and they have to go back for an emergency or something, back to the United States. But yeah, then that process, that's a start over, go back to square one. So even though you have 30 days to start the next part of the process, and we will talk about that, you want to get it started as soon as possible. Now, we're going to talk about the land borders too, and it's possible, I think, you have an experience, you've experienced it solely electronic. I think that's great if that is the case, but it's possible that you will have to fill out a piece of paper. There's lots of videos out there about filling out that piece of paper. And maybe sometimes it sounds like that FMM is super important. Essentially, because it's electronic now, it's gone from being a separate piece of paper, that you manually write in and they stamp that piece of paper, to being a stamp in your passport. So the FMM is inside your passport now. So the thing is, though, at a land border, they don't, I guess, is it customs, or I'm not sure who it is at the border, but there are guards at the border who have guns that will, look inside your car and make sure you're not bringing more guns or alcohol or whatever it is. They're trying to make sure there's no contraband coming into Mexico.
Or animals.
Animals, yeah, exactly. So
animals, plants, yes.
Yeah, so they will.
So basically,
yeah, they'll wave you across and say like, okay, you're good to go. They might not even look. They might look at you and say like, oh, this guy's good. Go ahead. And it is really important not to just go ahead. So there will be an INM office when you cross the border, but the guys standing there looking in your car will not mention it at all. Unlike when you go through an airport, there's a line you won't get through. You won't get out of the airport unless you go through immigration. On a land border, all bets are off. It's up to you to find the INM office and do the process that we just talked about in terms of getting your passport stamps. Make sure you show them that page. That is very key. And that they give you 30 days and not 180 or something like that. Stop. If you see them write down 180 or anything more than 30, anything different than 30, don't leave that office. Get it straightened out there.
That's so true.
You got that. Once you got that 30-day clock starts, what's the next step?
As I said, it's very important as a land border. You need to stop in the I&M office. All the borders has an I&M office somewhere. So sometimes they are not very visible, sometimes they are, but you need to ask. And I even had returned some customers because the I&M office was closed.
Yeah.
So they need to go back and find another border with an I&M office open because it's better to go back and drive another 2 hours than drive another 10, 20 hours, depending on where you're planning to relocate. So that's
Yeah.
very important, Brighton. Thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah.
So basically, once you start your 30 days, what do you need to do? Just you can do it on your own or hire a facilitator that makes all the paperwork for you. And you need to visit the I&M office in your state. So all the states in Mexico has an I&M office, just one, unfortunately, per state. So you need to go there, and as a consulate, every I&M office in Mexico is different in the terms of their logistics. So that is very important that you get closer to some other foreigners that had already the experience, or just go there and ask to somebody on the line how is going to be the process. You need to ask to somebody or foreigner that already have that experience, or to the immigration officers. I have seen a lot of foreigners that they ask to the security officers, what is the movement there? The security officers change shifts every now and they are not familiarized with the process. So just be careful to whom you ask, because that's very important. So if you realize that the process is making the line early morning, sometimes it's not that early morning. Sometimes they give appointments for one day before, I mean, one day after you go and make the line. Another important thing, I&M finish all the appointment system. So there are no more appointments, meaning as it was on 2021 and 2022. So there's no online website where you can make an appointment. That will be very useful, but it doesn't exist anymore. You cannot make an appointment face to face. Like I just walk in at 11 and hey, I am Yvonne, I want an appointment. That doesn't exist anymore either. So the way that almost all the I&M offices are working is just making a line at the morning. Different timing depending on the city and depending on how many people they have waiting, but just making a line. First come, first served. So it's important for you to mention how is the things are doing on the state you want to start. For if you hire a facilitator, normally the facilitator will know all the details, and they even make the line for you, so you can just arrive with all the paperwork ready and just present your application. Another thing that is very good, normally depending on the I&M office, what you can expect the day you go to the office. Just present the paperwork, they will authorize you, and if all the elements are okay, meaning the boss is there, the printer is working, the system is working, you can receive your card the same day. That it happens in most of the I&M offices. I have heard that in some offices it's not the same day because they are super crowded and they only have one printer. So they can take up to 3 to 5 business days. So you need to come back for biometrics. Biometrics is standing for photos, fingerprints, and sign. So you need to sign your resident card, and everything is digital. That can take up to 5 business days because they have a lot of workload, and they will send you an email and they said, okay, your application is authorized, is ready. You can come back for fingerprints and they will print your card. So again, you need to make sure how the things are going in your state. And there's also misinformation about taking months. I haven't heard in any state lately, thanks God, that is taking months. But yeah, it can take 5, 10 business days because of the workload, because the printer is not working, but not months anymore. So you can be safe on that side.
You mentioned that there's only one INM office per state, but I thought there was one in Cabo, and there's definitely one in La Paz.
Yeah, there's one. Yeah, normally is there one per state. Even in Mexico City, there's one, but yeah, you are right. There's one in La Paz and there's one in Cabo, meaning both are Baja California Sur. So that's because of the demand that especially Cabo has. And also another state that has a lot of demand is Guanajuato. Guanajuato has three. They have León, San Miguel de Allende, and Irapuato. But besides that, I haven't heard about more than one office. Thank you for mentioning that.
Okay, yeah, because the only reason I mentioned that is because someone that I had interviewed, Lini, if you've seen her video, she came to La Paz because it was going to take too much time in Cabo. So she lives in Cabo, but she was having trouble with the office there. So she's like, you know what, I'm just going to go down to La Paz and get this handled. And also specifically, a lot of my followers are looking to live in La Paz or already live here. Is that the INM office has moved. So it used to be on like Cinco de Febrero and something, I can't remember exactly, but it's no longer there. So if you're talking to expats who got their stuff handled a year or so ago or more, they might send you to the wrong place. So make sure you find the right address, the current address for the INM office if you're in La Paz.
It is already in Google.
Once you finish this process, you are now a resident, temporary or permanent, of Mexico, and you can cross the border as often as you want. And so that makes things very easy. You don't have to pay the tourist fee. And if you fly into Mexico, you can request that the airline remove the fee. So I've actually got a video about that up here, and I've got a whole list of airline tickets that I still need to go back to and request that fee removal. But a lot of them will, you have a U.S. passport. They assume you're not a resident of Mexico. They assume you're a tourist. They charge you the tourist fee. It's built into your ticket, and thus you need to pay that. If you're crossing by land and you're going to be here a while, I mean, now once you've got that card, you can just go straight through the border. You don't have to worry about going back to the INM office each time. Yeah, I think that's why the guards don't ever mention the INM office, because so many people passing by land already are Mexican citizens or they have a residency or something, and people are just the INM offices are not busy at those land crossings because most people don't need to go through this process. But okay, so that was just the process in detail of getting to be a Mexican resident. So we're going to talk about the changes, and also, kind of some people think the next step is like, I should become a citizen of Mexico then. And there are reasons to do that and reasons not to do that. So we are going to cover that. That's going to be coming up. But first, let's talk about any other changes. I know the solvency requirements were changed. Are there any other changes that happened in 2023?
Average of 20%. So the
Mm-hmm.
economic solvency change every year, it normally change the inflation percentage.
Yep.
This year, the inflation has been crazy everywhere in the world. So the
Yep.
average has been up to 20% in general. So that's even crazy.
Yeah, and well, let's talk about those two. Essentially, you have your economic solvency, which is like how much money do you have in the bank or in retirement accounts or wherever? Like, how much do you have enough cash sitting around, or do you make enough? So let's talk about those. Really, the first one's easy. Do you have this number of dollars in the bank for at least a year or 6 months or something, so you could show that it's been there, that you didn't just get a loan from your parents and going to give it back? But there is also the ability to come in based on, I'm already making money and the money is coming in. So how does that work in terms of proving your income?
So if you're still working in a company and you're planning to move to Mexico and you just keep working online in your same job, they ask for pay stubs. So the way to show your economic solvency is through your pay stubs. And since it is a fixed amount and it's very clear, they only ask for the last 6 months. In some consulates, they may ask, it's very strange, but they may ask for a letter of your company saying that you are really an employee for that company. So you need to be ready. And they will tell you that in the email that they send or in the website of each consulate. The other way to prove it is if you are applying through investments or savings, or for example, you are retiree through Social Security, they ask for the 12 months because of what you mentioned. It's not that you ask for a loan for your parents or something. Is they want to see consistency for a certain period of time so you can live here. As in any other country, they don't want people to ask for a job here if there's not enough, not even for Mexicans. So they want people to move, but they already have that part covered, that you already know you're going to work, you're going to have a business, or you're going to be an employee for a Mexican company, but don't give troubles. Just, live
Yeah.
here, survive here, but don't be part of the problem.
Yeah, totally get that. So, two questions then is one is, can you use just the I've got this amount of money in the bank to get you can use that for temporary residency, right? So if you're like, 40 years old and you just happen to be really wealthy, you can just show, yeah, I haven't worked in years, but I've got this money, so you can get your temporary residency. So it's an option both ways. It's not, I was thinking maybe that's an option just for the retirement aspect. What about people who are, like myself, self-employed? And so my income is just all over the place. I used the I've got enough money in the bank route. But if someone doesn't have that number, how does that work?
So first of all, if you have that number and there's a lot of freelancer or independent people, they will ask for the last 12 months. And what they do is just making an average of what you do every single month, and they have a yearly amount. So if you are there or you are over there, of course you will be eligible. What
Okay.
happens if you are not there or you are close enough? It's basically criteria. So if you are very close, they may say, okay, we can void it and you are authorized.
Okay.
I have had some cases that they even have like 100 US dollars less than the requirement and they are denied. So
Um,
that is criteria because the rule says certain amount of money, but the final decision is from the consul at the Mexican consulate. So there's nothing to do about it. They
mhm.
will tell you, hey, you will not apply because you are short for 100 US dollars or whatever. So
Mhm.
you need to come back in another whatever time where you can prove the minimum economic requirement.
And this gets back to something I mentioned earlier, which is the importance of doing it sooner rather than later. So, one of the things about getting Mexican residency is you don't need to live in Mexico to do it. You've got to get those couple of, like, in the beginning, 30 days or something, you have to be in Mexico, or maybe even less, you can get it done. So if you're thinking about moving into Mexico in the future, there is no harm in getting your residency now and then, having it when you need it in the future, just in case your revenue goes down. Say you lost your job and you're like, whoa, it's really nice that I got that Mexican residency that I can pull out of my pocket and move to a country that's less expensive, but you wouldn't necessarily have been able to do it. You wouldn't meet the requirements. And the requirements are set as of January 1 every year. And it does have to do with like the amount of minimum wage and things like that in pesos and translated to dollars. Now, the peso right now is incredibly strong compared to the dollar. There's a lot of change, a lot of those changes that can happen from year to year. It's, for the most part, always going up, but there is the exchange rate and inflation and the Mexican minimum wage. So there's a number of things that set those dollar amounts. Well, I've been watching it every year. It just gets bigger and usually jumps a lot. So sooner rather than later is, I guess, the theme.
Exactly. That's a very, very smart advice, Brighton. And also, for example, I have had many clients that in my personal opinion, it's a smart move. First, they do the residency and then they sell their house and they sell their belongings. They quit their job. So just have that secure after you do the rest of the things. So it's like doing the right thing. You have your Mexican, then I can sell my house in the US or in Canada or whatever. Then I can quit my job and then start my own business online, or I can get my retirement pension early retirement pension for some people, but you have already your Mexican card. So you will not be kicked out of the country. You are allowed to stay here for a year, which is the one for the first temporary resident card, or you're allowed to stay here forever as a permanent. So that is a smart move.
Question in terms of that after that first year or after the fourth year. So you're a temporary resident, you prove your that you have the income and you meet the requirements. And then a year later, what do you need to do a year later? Do you need to prove it again? Or do you what happens at that second 1 year and the after the next 3 years?
You need to show your last bank account statement. For some states like Baja, they need to show the last three bank account statements, just to make sure that you still have money to survive, because you are requesting a renewal mostly for 3 years. So they just want to make sure, okay, you can still live here, but show me that you still have money to live here.
Okay.
So just show the last three, in some states the last one bank account statement. And of course, for renewing, you need to be here, because
Yep.
you need to present your own application, and they will take you again fingerprints, the photos, and you sign again your card. So you need to be here to renew it.
Is there any other changes for 2023 that folks should be aware of? That if they had information from last year or watched a video from last year, any other changes?
No, basically is the same thing,
Okay.
besides, of course, what we talk about. And also what I want to mention, because there's another a frequently asked question. Who is the people that needs to prove the economic solvency requirement? Because I am a father and I have three children. So
Oh
my
yes,
three
please explain.
children, of course, they are my dependents.
Yeah.
So, should they need to prove economic? How much do I need to prove? If they requested, for example, 42,000 at the end of the year, how much do I need to show if I'm going to bring my two, my three, my four children, whatever, or my wife? Yes, you need to prove more than that. How much more? It depends on the consulate. That's why it's important, the first introduction email. So I am Yvonne, and I'm gonna bring my whole family that it's ta 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 ta. So very specific.
Mhm.
How much money do I need to show so I can bring my whole family? That's
Okay.
one important thing. And also, if you have an 18-year old children, it's in Mexico it's considered the adulthood. So that children cannot apply as a dependent from you. That's sad because, of course, not even in Mexico, you may know that you don't have that age, you will not have the minimum economic requirement.
Right.
But that children cannot apply linked to the parents. That children needs to apply by themselves. So he needs to prove, or she needs to prove, their own economic solvency.
So let's go back to now. I'm glad you mentioned this because people have asked me about this and I haven't had a good answer for them. So I'm glad, talking about families, I knew it was more, it sounds like there's not it's not like very specific things. But okay, so someone brings their 16-year-old son or daughter to Mexico. They live here. They have enough money. Mom or dad has enough money to bring that child over. They get their temporary residency. And now they turn 18. Do they now need to prove their own economic solvency, or otherwise they have to leave, or because they've started the process under someone
No.
else?
So, for example, in that example, they have 16.
Yeah.
They are linked to their parents. They got their temporary visa in 1 year for 1 year, and then they renew it for three. They are ready to go. Even though they are over 18 years old after the 4 years, they can apply for permanent just for the timing. So after they got the first temporary, if they turn 18 years old next year, they just renew it. They don't need to start from scratch. So
Okay.
that's an important thing, mentioning like it's better sooner than later. So
Right.
if they are 17 and they can be linked to you, next year it's just a renewal. They don't need to prove any economic solvency. The only difference is that as an adult, they need to sign by themselves. As a
Okay.
children, your parent, mother, or father need to sign all your paperwork. You,
Yeah.
as an 18, you need to sign about your own paperwork, but you don't need to prove your economic solvency. You don't need to go out to the consulate, nothing, because it's a renewal. But
Yeah.
if it's the first time you are 18, 19 years old and you want to come to Mexico, you cannot be linked to your parent. You need
Yeah.
to prove your own economic solvency. So
Yes.
that is complicated, I know. If you are over 18 years old, what some of my clients did it just start 1 year before that and just try to deposit for 12 months and try to get them through their minimum economic requirements. So for example, if they are working, they don't have enough monthly of course they're not going to have like the 3,000 or the 4,000 per month. They
Mhm.
may have less, so you cover the difference as a parent, so after the 12 months they are ready to go and prove their own economic solvency.
Okay. Great. So now I think this, I'm really excited about this video because I think this is just jam packed with information, and I hope folks are enjoying this. And we're going to have your contact information actually is already down below in the description if people are watching this, so people can reach out to you and have you talk more about your business and how people can work with you. But let's talk about going the next step to citizenship, because I think when a lot of people start the idea of moving to another country, they think I need to become a citizen of that country. And there are reasons maybe that people do it, but it's not a necessity. So tell us first why or why not.
I will say you as a temporary, even as a permanent, you will have the same rights as a Mexican except for voting. As a temporary, for example, you cannot work, but that doesn't mean that you cannot work forever. I mean, you cannot work as the first step. But if you're hired by a company, you can pay for a work permit, or if you want to start your own business, you will pay for a work permit. So that's like an extra step. It doesn't mean you cannot work. As a permanent, same thing. You cannot vote, but you can work. So I will basically, if you don't have a strong reason to do a citizenship, as a permanent or temporary, you will have the same rights
Mhm.
except for voting. So you need to think about, and if you're hire a facilitator, you need to explain what will be your reason of becoming a citizen, because of course that's a different process called naturalization, and that is extra steps. It is not in INM office. It is in the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. And it's basically because of misunderstanding, as you mentioned, and it's because they don't know what is the difference. So you will have the same rights. Normally, immigration in Mexico, it's very supported by the human rights. So they will not kick you out because you are legally in the country. So they will have not any reason to kick you out unless you are like a criminal or something very extreme.
Yeah.
But some clients ask me, I want to be a citizen because I want to live here forever. I don't want Mexico to have a reason to send me back. So no, as a temporary or permanent, they will not have a reason to send you back.
Mhm.
So you need to a stronger situations like for, I don't know, in heritage purposes, or because you have a family and you want to be part of that heritage of being a Mexican, or
Mhm.
something more deep in the, I don't know. But as a rights, you will not be kicked out. You
Mhm.
are legally here, and basically you don't need it to live here, to work here, to open a business, to have a family, nothing.
Yes. So, and if you want to know more about this, I know that Ada over at Living Simply in Mexico, she does have Mexican heritage and has gotten her citizenship. So, but I think it did require knowing Mexican history, knowing the Spanish language. So there were a number of things. There were a number of requirements. It's probably less than getting into the United States as a citizen, but you do need to be a little more. It's relatively easy as long as you have some money to get residency. Citizenship is a higher bar. And like Ivonne said, you're getting the right to vote and participate in politics. But I'm not sure. A lot of people are running away from that anyway.
And also, for example, during the pandemic, in some countries, um, when they closed borders, they said if you are not a citizen, you are not allowed to come back.
Mm,
Or if they are sending planes to bring back their citizens, they said, I'm sorry, you are a permanent or you are a temporary resident. I'm sorry, you are not a citizen, so you cannot take this plane to go back to the country. So some people is still scared about it, and they said, oh no, I want my Mexican citizenship. In
okay.
Mexico, as I said, it is regulated by the human resource law, so it will not happen unless they change the laws. But
Mm,
no, it will not happen here.
yeah.
So in fact, when it was a pandemic, Mexico had their borders open. So
Okay.
even those people that they were living as a temporary or permanent resident for different countries, they were accepted in Mexico temporarily.
Yeah.
So no, that is not going to happen so far.
Yeah.
So that is another reason that my clients mentioned.
As we're wrapping up here, I want folks to know how to get in touch with you, how to ask questions, because down in the comments is not a good place to ask specific questions here. I do want to mention that just because Ivonne is not reading the comments on my YouTube channel, and I might not have the answer. So if you have ideas about future YouTube videos, let those down below. If you have experiences with the immigration, leave those comments down below so that other people can read them. And one thing we didn't talk about is kind of the other, it's not really a visa, but the other way that people from the United States, Canada, other places are in Mexico, foreigners are in Mexico under tourist permits. And so, and those can be up to 180 days. And sometimes the government cracks down and gives you very little time, like only 7 days. Sometimes they're given 180 days to everyone who crosses the border, and that gives you permission to be in the country for that time. There are people who are US citizens who live inside Mexico, and they call them border runs. They cross the border every 180 days and come back. It's not a guarantee that you will be allowed back because they'll let you back in, but they might write 7 days. And you're like, whoa, I was counting on another 6 months because I've been doing this for years and years and years. And I think if you have a track record of having done that, and they look through your passport and they're like, wow, you just, every 60 days or every 180 days you cross the border, they're less likely to let you continue doing that. They're cracking down on people who are living in the country as tourists when they should be living here as residents. So people talk about it. It has happened a lot in the past. Mexico's definitely trying to get more of a handle on that. And the other thing to mention is if you are here and you're on a tourist visa and you want to stay 181 days, do not stay 1 day past. I've got another video coming up with someone who did stay 2 days past and spent an extra 2 days in an immigration jail, essentially. And she wasn't even leaving the country when this happened. She was flying from Merida back to Mexico City to collect up her stuff. And then, like a couple days later, she was going to fly out. But they were checking on domestic flights. They were checking people's immigration status for domestic flights. And they pulled her aside and they said, you're in the country illegally. And it was a heck of a process to get out of that jail. Not that expensive, but once I have that video, I'll have it at the end of this. But so, any comments on that about tourist visas and whatnot?
So again, it's better to do it sooner than later because you don't want to take that risk. That
Yeah.
is complicated.
Now let's talk about how you serve people, because your services go beyond just helping them with immigration. And there are a number of places. I know that you are located in Querétaro, which I was just in. It's a beautiful city. I loved it there. And but you have other locations, and there are, just to be fair, there are other people like this. Either I've got a video with Blanca here in La Paz is another option. She's kind of like helps you with anything. And then there are also people, I think as Sal is one of them, who will help you with just the immigration process. and you kind of are maybe a little bit more like Blanca in terms of you'll help with the whole thing. And so, yeah, tell folks, where you can help and what those services are beyond just what we talked about is helping with that immigration. And I will say, get help with the immigration. It is not that expensive. Kat and I did it on our own, and I don't know how many trips we had to make back to the I&M office because we didn't have the right paperwork and we didn't have the right receipt from the bank, and we had to go and get copies and whatnot.
Hmm.
Go with someone who knows, who speaks English and can explain to you and has done this so many times before and is familiar with the process as of today, not the process as of 3 weeks ago, because they might be like, oh yeah, well now you need 3 copies instead of two. And sometimes that's hard
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
understand the little things. So yeah, tell us, how can you help people move into
So,
Mexico?
thank you. So basically, that's why we are called Host Relocation Mexico, because we not only do immigration, we do all the relocation services that a foreigner may need when they come to Mexico. So, first of all, yes, I'm Ivonne Pavaan, the co-founder and general manager of the company. So I started this business because I was involved with many foreigners, and I've seen their needs basically. So, for example, that's why we open the settling services, meaning after you have the immigration, which is the basic, you will need a house. So we have a real estate team that they are licensed realtors that we can help you to find even a rental or a home to buy here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing is what happened after the house. So most of the real estate, and honestly, is not their job. Their job is just giving you the keys, giving you the basic information, done. We as relocators, we help you with settling the services. When you buy a house, you need to set up the services for water, electricity, internet, gas. In Mexico, the things as in your country is going to be different. So you need a guidance on how to pay the bills. Every state may be different. Thanks to the pandemic, we are more technological. Before it was only cash,
Mm-hmm.
but we need to tell you which are the websites, which are the applications that you can use in your cell phone to pay for the services. And for if you want a rental, for example, normally all the rentals has all the services set up, but we can help you with the payments. We can help you with all what you need. If you We also do the shopping tours, the recognition tours, so you can know your area a little bit more. Sometimes the people, they don't have a car, or they are old enough to just walk around for hours and hours to know what is around. So we take you to the certain points. Here is a market, here is the supermarket, here is the shopping mall, here is a pharmacy, here is a hospital, and we explain you how are the things working in Mexico. For example, what is IMSS? What is INAPAM? If you're eligible for the INAPAM or not, what is it? To open a bank account, to get an RFC, which is now the hot topic of the moment because they just changed the policies. Now all the people that is over 18 years old and all the Mexicans and foreigners that live here over 18 years old needs to have an RFC for mainly everything. We also help you with car registration, getting driver license. So as you can see, it's like a lot of services that you will need to live here because
Mm-hmm.
that is not easy. The government offices are very complicated most of the times. They don't speak English, I will say, in 99% of the cases. So if you are not fluent in Spanish, besides the Mexican bureaucracy, that can be hard for you to understand. And as you mentioned, sometimes you are here, I'm here for my driver license. Yeah, but you need a copy of this, you need this, you need this. So it's like 2 or 3 trips
Yeah.
wasting your time, and then you don't understand. So we just want to make you the process as smooth as possible because we know that you're already stressed out to live out of your country, to not talking the language, to a different culture. So we just cover you, and try to help you to make the things smoother, easier, and also faster. Because we go with you as your translators, and we just tell Brighton, bring this, and this, and this. I will take the rest. Let's go. So that's just easier for you. And also, you mentioned that we are located in different states. So I live in Querétaro, so the main office is here, but we also serve San Miguel de Allende. We have an office in La Paz that covers also the Cabo area. And we have an office also in Mexico City, and we are opening right now Guadalajara, not um, Puerto Vallarta, not all the beach area still, but we're opening in Guadalajara area. So far we covered those places, and hopefully in a few more years we can cover more. But anyway, just feel free to send me an email, and I can guide you even though you are in Cuernavaca or in Puebla or in Mazatlan. I will be very happy to help you in this process, even though remotely, since the technology is very, very helpful for those cases now.
Yeah, and I want to go through really quickly the concept, all those things. I mean, the reason most of us are moving to Mexico is to simplify life. And all those things, like, this is the way it works. I got my stack of papers here that I'm like, okay, I walk into CFE, the electric company, and I'm like, I need to get this service into my name, and I'm trying to speak Spanish. And they look through and they're like, okay, you got this, you got this. Oh, you don't have, this next page, you still need this. And so I go back and I get that, and I got, and I put that in there. And then I walk back in and I give it to them, and they're like, okay, you got this, you got this. Oh, you got this time. You got this. Oh, you didn't get this. Because they do not tell you all the things you're missing. They tell you the first thing you're missing that they see. So if you are trying to do it on your own, try to make sure that they tell you the first time everything that's missing from your little packet, because you just end up keep just going around. So having someone do it for you is so worth it. And you mentioned the INAPAM. If you are a senior citizen, getting that, you could save a lot of money. So there's a number of things that will help you out financially with working with someone who knows the system, and you're going to save so much time. And that's what we're down here for, is to have relaxation and time.
And also, we gave you the best tips and practices. For example, the INAPAM, not all the people knows about it unless there's somebody, a friend, that knows about it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we help you with best practices. So after immigration, we tell them, hey, you're over 60 years old, you need this and this, or hey, Brighton, you bought a house, so you need to have mandatory and RFC. So yeah. Those kind of things that you may not know, and you said, okay, I'm done. I have my permanent residency. I have my house done. No, it's not there yet. So, yeah, we help you with the next processes, and also we are so empathic with the clients, so you can ask for our references. That even though you don't pay for the services, it's like, we are just a WhatsApp distance. So just, Ivonne, I'm sorry, I have this question. Where should I go to find these? Or where should I go to buy this thing? Or they are telling me that I need this. Where can I get it? So those kind of things, you have us to help you. So we are, as I said, a WhatsApp distance. So feel free to send us a WhatsApp. We are here for you. We can be your network connection. We can be your Mexican's voice here. Or, hey, I'm stuck here. I don't know how to solve this issue. Well, we are here for you. And as I said, those services, of course, they don't have any price for it. It's just like, we try to make connection with you. That's our important thing at the end of the story, that you be happy here, that you come here, you said it better, you come here to simplify your life, but sometimes it's not as simple as you may think. So we are here to help you make it simple.
Thank you so much, Ivonne. I know this was a long video. I know we've used more of your time than anticipated, but I'm hoping folks have gotten a huge amount of value out of this video, because there's been some gems in here. If folks are talking, if they're thinking about starting this process, or if they're somewhere in the middle, about getting to be a permanent resident of Mexico. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Bryden, for your time. And I am so happy to share that with all the foreigners. It's like Mexico is a great country. I cannot love it more. So just if you have a dream, just make it true.
Yes, so you're going to find Yvonne's contact information down below. And over here, you're going to find a couple of videos that are not about techno process geeky stuff, but are about having a good time in Mexico. So check these out next to kind of decompress from this video and just have some fun. Hasta luego.